Welcome to the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacy Phillips. As a leading manifestation advisor with a process that's, radically different from the old New Age model, mine is rooted in psychology, neuroscience, and my energetic gifts. I created this podcast to help you expand your subconscious limiting beliefs about the potential of deserving the manifestations you're calling in. Therefore, you're tuning into this podcast series to show your subconscious that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, you've already started the process of manifesting it. So today we're bringing you a special episode to support you during this incredibly triggering time. Depending on where you live, here we've reached day 5 of social distancing and a self-quarantine. Many are experiencing more extreme or less extreme of this. May you be in the Bay Area or different parts of the world. And we thought it was really important today to bring you an episode that can hopefully bring your nervous system back into neutral and hopefully alleviate some of the fear you're experiencing, some of the isolation that you're experiencing, and just the triggers in general. Whether you're experiencing isolation, unbelievable financial strain and fear in general, a lack of a support system, especially that your children are home from school, and then of course the worry that you're having come up about the people you love in your life, that immune systems are compromised. So one thing I want to make really clear, and I use this in a post, and I think this is really important to understand. In manifestation, there's always a metaphorical rainbow one receives after passing a big test, navigating a magic dark, or staying afloat with trust during a rock bottom. Those are the 3 things we're being presented with at the moment, and each of us are being directly affected differently. So we're co-creating with the universe differently. One thing I want to make really clear, even when there's a pandemic, even when there's a virus that's going around, manifestation energetics work the exact same thing. And it's a beautiful thing we can always rely on and always trust their continuity. So right now is the perfect time to double down in your manifestation practice. Look at how this is directly affecting you and what you're currently calling in, because this is a time where you can create unbelievable amounts of magnetism on the other side of this, namely when you're practicing to get back into neutral. Pull your power back from all of the fear that's happening, that's triggering, that's being presented to you, and then using your energy to navigate through which of those 3 you might be going through. May it be, again, a test, a magic dark, or a rock bottom. And again, fear of the unknown can be the most triggering aspect during uncertain times. Uncertainty simply equals those energies I just said. And I will say it one more time because it's so important. A test, a rock bottom, or a magic dark. But I want to remind you that you're always loved and you're supported by the universe. So what I really want you to do is look back at the most triggering unknown you've ever experienced before. What did you manifest on the other side? That should be a little bit of the comfort and trust that holds you through this experience. And then the other thing I want to give you full permission on is to create your list. Take the time you need to feel your emotions and your circumstances entirely and work through your triggers, but then take your power back so you can be met with your manifestations on the other side of this. I repeat, it's an incredible time to create magnetism. So one thing we created for everybody that's entirely free, it has completely 3 free deep imaginings, our hypnosis process, and journal prompts, is a quarantine roadmap. You can find a link below. Inside of that portal, it's a little workshop within itself. We also have a health and body deep imagining for those of you that this is triggering a lot of fear around your body and around wellness and immunity and contagion. It's been tremendously helpful for our community. Again, there's a roadmap in there, and there's also instructions of how to create a magnetic meetup digitally with your community to lessen the isolation. Another thing to note is that this podcast episode has been recorded at the top of this pandemic. So as this virus continues to show us more information along the way, we highly advise everybody to go straight to the websites with the facts. The World Health Organization, the CDC website, as well as your local publichealth.gov. And we also highly advise everybody to follow the safe at home quarantine practices to help keep your community safe along the way. Today, we also, I think, have the perfect guest to really help bring people down from that fear space and back into perspective and neutral. She's my personal, along with Unique Hammond, they're my personal nutritionist that I've been working with for 7 months now, and I've had tremendous results. I'm about 80%, I would say 85% fully healed from all of my endocrine issues. The craziest thing ever is this month is mid-cycle of my third mitosis. You will learn a lot more about what I'm talking about from the first episode she was on, linked below, where we talk about hormones in depth, unbelievable amounts of autoimmune and diseases people are struggling with. And what I love about Karen and why I thought would be the perfect voice for today is she is the most accessible, scientific, grounded healer that I've ever heard of, and unconventional, which is unbelievable. So to give you perspective, Karen Hurd is a holistic nutritional practitioner who began her work in this field over 30 years ago when her daughter of 18 months ingested poison and was given 6 weeks to live. After extensive research, literally during the moment of having a miscarriage and hearing this news of her daughter and her daughter starting to wither in front of her eyes, she took herself to the local medical library and stayed all day long until she found a protocol that is completely focused on using soluble fiber, namely beans, to bind with your liver bile to take all of the toxicity out of your body. So her daughter made a full recovery against every odd. And Karen went on to graduate from American Academy of Nutrition and received her master's degree in biochemistry from the University of St. Joseph and is prepping for her PhD program in biochemistry. She also served for 4 years as an officer in the Military Intelligence Corps in the Army, where she did work with nuclear warfare or nervine warfare, I want to say. She mentions that in the first episode, which is kind of what gave her the inkling of where to look for her daughter's poison recovery. She's been married to her husband, Stephen, for 41 years. They have 5 children, ages 25 through 34 years. They reside in Fall Creek, Wisconsin. And what I love about Karen is she's deep, deep, deep into the science. So today she tells us a complete scientific overview of COVID-19. Of course, as always, I believe this is a very intelligent audience. We always ask that you reach out to your own healthcare provider, pending any issues do come up for you. However, my trust muscle is so unbelievably strong with Karen now that she is who I consult, and actually who I had the privilege of speaking to a couple of weeks ago to be like, Karen is, like, how do I view this? And so today is hopefully a wonderful episode, again, to support you and try to bring you back into neutral. And that's our whole objective. So without further ado, we're going to get into this. And of course, stay till the end because I had some questions unrelated to COVID-19 that I had to ask her. And just to preface, we will be having another full episode with her soon, completely centered on preparing for pregnancy, during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. I'm very excited because she has, again, unconventional and completely accessible scientific suggestions on. So here goes. All right, Karen, welcome back. We're so excited to have you back here, especially during this time.
I am very pleased to be back.
So to kick this off, Karen, I had the privilege of talking to you, I think it was a week or 2 weeks ago on our routine checkup. And I got to ask you about the coronavirus, and you were able to calm any fears or things that I was picking up on it. So I really just want to give you the floor as somebody I turn to in health right now to just get your insight on it. And just in general, I just want to give you the floor to start talking, and I'll start asking questions.
Okay, that sounds great. The coronavirus, I want us to understand what the coronavirus is. It's a single strand of RNA. RNA is a genetic material that serves as a template. It's copied and then it's transcribed to make the viral progeny. That's the descendants, the children, the offspring of the virus. To be able to do that, though, this RNA strand, it's just this strand of genetic material. It has to have a way to reproduce itself, and it doesn't. So it has to hijack the cell machinery so that it can use the cell's machinery to reproduce itself. So to be able to do that, this strand of RNA has to enter into a cell. Now, with this particular virus, with the coronavirus, the cells that it's going to enter in is in the cells that are lining the respiratory tract. They're called epithelial cells. And they're the very first cells that are infected by this RNA strand. What happens is the strand will cross through the cellular membrane and enter into the cell where it will commandeer the cellular machinery, reproduce itself. It first has to copy itself, and then it has to transcribe itself into its progeny, into the virus. And then once you have the virus transcribed, then it will go through a process called exocytosis, and they will eject themselves, these viral children, if you will, from this RNA strand. They eject themselves out of the cell to go to a neighboring cell and infect that cell. And so then it goes on. And then, of course, when we are infecting cells, and that causes difficulty with the upper respiratory tract. And so then we can get a cough, we can have shortness of breath, and we have an upper respiratory infection. Most of infections caused by the coronavirus, they're very mild and they're self-limited, but some of them can get out of hand and can reach the lower respiratory tract where they can cause more severe illness such as bronchitis, pneumonia. It can make obstructive pulmonary disease worse. It can get worse. And so this particular coronavirus, the coronavirus 19, it's one of a family of coronaviruses that are acting primarily in the upper respiratory tract. We do have coronaviruses that also work on the gastrointestinal tract, but the one we're most concerned with it's targeting our upper respiratory tract. So the incubation period, probably people are aware of this, it's 2 to 14 days. It means you can be exposed to the virus, but it's 2 to 14 days before you would develop symptoms. And those symptoms are your cough, shortness of breath, and a fever. And I want to spend a long time on this fever because fever is our friend. And today what I really want to do is, focus on, if you go to the CDC, that's the Centers for Disease Control. If you go there, they have outlined what you need to do to prevent, it's all the hygienic measures that need to be taken. And then the isolation measures, quarantine type of measures that can be taken to help minimize exposure to the coronavirus. But what no one is addressing is what happens if you get it? What are we going to do about it?
And before that, for the person out there who maybe doesn't have all the information or, tends to lean on the really fearful side, how can you even contract it? Who's the most at risk of it turning into a respiratory illness? Just to kind of lessen all of the fear in the pandemic that's sort of circulating.
Right. The people that are going to succumb most likely, this is an upper respiratory flu. Every year, upper respiratory flus go around. It's just part of the cold and flu season. 80,000 people a year will perish from an upper respiratory infection, a cold. But the people that are dying are the infirm. It's the people that are immunocompromised, the people that are on chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is a treatment for cancer, and it suppresses the immune system. Many people have diseases like arthritis, other autoimmune diseases, and they're on immunosuppressant drugs. When you're on a medication that suppresses your immune system, then you're more vulnerable. It's people that are old, and they already have several other health problems. It's the very, very young, like infants that already have health problems. So, I was reading different information about the coronavirus, and, where it really concentrated in the United States at the beginning on the West Coast there, up in the vast majority of people died. They were in a long-term nursing home care facility. I mean, we're talking old people that are in a nursing home. These are the ones.
Convalescent.
It's, yeah. So in a long-term care facility is what it said. Yeah. So it's our already immunocompromised people that are the ones that are attacked, but they're always the one that are attacked by these viruses. I mean, every year there's something that's going to come up. And so the coronavirus is another upper respiratory virus. The coronavirus is part of a whole, the one that we're looking at, the COVID-19, it's just one of a whole family of coronaviruses. And most of the coronaviruses are quite mild. And so there can be some more that are more difficult. That, in the years past, we've had SARS. SARS is a type of coronavirus. It's a little more serious. We just have to use common sense and, not expose others to it. This is going to stretch further than just the health field, because as far as the health field is concerned, this is just another respiratory tract virus. And so most people are going to survive it. Some will die. Some always die of respiratory tract infections. And we have a little bit of the season left, but the season won't go on forever, because the coronavirus, just like all viruses, is very susceptible to heat.
Yes.
It can't survive high heats at all. Higher temperatures like 30 to 40 degrees Celsius, that's 86 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. It just wipes it out. The virus can't exist. And that's our primary defensive technique in fighting it. If we got an upper respiratory infection, including if we got the coronavirus, if we contract the coronavirus, so should we just go make out our will and say, I'm going to die? Not at all. You're not going to die. Unless, there are some that are dying, because they're on immunosuppressant drugs, or they're already immunocompromised for another reason. Then that's a real danger. But the average person, no. They need to increase their body temperature, and that's the protocol I want to go through with you.
Excellent. Let's move into that.
Yeah, we just have to increase our body temperature. I should add here that it's interesting that lower temperatures, like 4 degrees Celsius, which is 39 degrees Fahrenheit, dramatically, significantly increase the persistence of the coronavirus. It can go up to 28 days. The average length of time that it can live is about 2 hours to 9 days.
And that's like outside of your body or inside, internally?
That's outside of your body.
Okay.
That's outside of your body on an inanimate surface. And it depends on the surface. If it's paper, if it's clothing, if it's, cold steel, on some type of machinery or something like that. And so it lasts a less significant time, like on paper or things that are more porous. And so it can last up to about 9 days. But if it gets cold, like 39 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 4 Celsius, it can last up 28 days. So this whole temperature thing, when we study chemical thermodynamics, and I'm going to teach you a little bit about chemical thermodynamics today, this is the key piece. It's the key piece in fighting the coronavirus. It's a key piece in fighting any virus, because viruses hate heat. They disassemble. They are disabled. They cannot reproduce themselves if they're in a higher heat environment. And so that's what we focus on. And it's really simple things to do.
Yeah, I'd love to know. What are your suggestions?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the fever. The fever is one of the symptoms of the coronavirus. Cough, there's 3 major symptoms of our coronavirus: cough, fever, shortness of breath. The shortness of breath is because it's an upper respiratory infection. And of course, it's more difficult to breathe if, you've got a cough. Everybody's had a cough before, it's harder to breathe. So, but the fever is a marker for the coronavirus. And everyone, when you get a fever, there's this dread fear that comes into our heart. Oh no, I have a fever, or my child has a fever. This is really bad. No, this is really good. The fever is a friend. A fever is where your own innate immune system is going to increase your body temperature. Normally, we're around 98 degrees Fahrenheit. 98.6 is always, said this is the body temperature, but that's the average. You can be 97, you can be in the high 96-ish, you can be 199, and those are all normal body temperatures too. The average body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. If we could raise our body temperature, then we can kill the virus. And that's exactly what the body does with a fever. It increases our body temperature. And unfortunately, we freak out and go, oh no, I have 102, I have 103, I have 104 degrees Fahrenheit temperature. You won't die from that type of a temperature. You have to go over 106. And your body won't let you go over 106 because then your brain cells are destroyed at that high heat. And you can't go that high. The only way you could go that high is that it has to be medically induced with a medication. So that's not going to happen. Your body, so if you ran 104 or 102, 103 Fahrenheit, it's just like, yes, you're miserable. You don't feel well. I mean, you're not going to be bouncing out of bed in the morning. You're sick. But you're going to get over the virus sooner because this elevated body temperature is eliminating the virus. And this is at exponential rates. We know that when you increase the temperature in a biochemical reaction, it's not just the rate of the chemical reaction is increased a little bit, a tiny bit, just a little bit. We're going to increase this. No, it's exponential. I mean, we just go gangbusters as far as disabling the viruses. In addition to that, with this increase of heat, we speed the immune system. The immune system, when we're exposed to a virus, it's going to mount an all-out attack on the virus. Our white blood cells, particularly the neutrophil and the macrophage, these are types of white blood cells, they will eat the virus. It's called phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is an engulfing, a swallowing. They surround the virus. They will surround that coronavirus and they just engulf it, eat it up, and it's gone. And so when we increase the speed of the neutrophil and increase the speed of the macrophage, then we eat viruses more quickly. And so we get over the infection more quickly. And so our heat is our primary tool. The fever is a symptom of the coronavirus, but not everybody will have the fever. Children have fevers more frequently than adults, and that's just typical for all viruses. And that's because a child's immune system isn't as advanced, as mature as an adult immune system. So the fever becomes a friend. Now, would there be a time we would want to lower the fever? The only time I would say that it would be fine to do that, and you can do that by over-the-counter medications. We have all kinds of over-the-counter medications that will lower the fever. And as soon as the medication wears off, then your body temperature will spike again because your body is desperate to kill the virus. So it's trying to use heat to do this. But if the child, adults usually can handle this no problem because they're older and they can, say, okay, I know I'm miserable. I have a fever, but this is helping me. But children sometimes are so miserable that, the parents is like, could I bring them a little relief? Well, if you reduce their fever, it will bring them a relief of the symptom of the fever because having a fever is uncomfortable in itself, being that warm. You're warm, you're cold, you're warm, you're cold. And, your body temperature can be high, but you can feel cold and you say, put a blanket on me. Yeah, that's typical fever reaction. But
And achy,
that would
uncomfortable.
achy. Oh yeah, you feel like you're achy, sore. You can have the headache. It's just everything is miserable. So if you feel like someone is so miserable, then certainly you could use the over-the-counter medications. We're just talking about acetaminophen. That'll lower your temperature. There's several of them that will do that. So it's a simple thing to do, but know that as we lower the body temperature, we're not going to get over the virus as quickly as we could. So, I have grandchildren, and I know when they're sick with whatever, because everybody gets sick with something sometimes. If you just hold them, and just are there for them, they come through, but it's okay too if you end up using something to lower the fever. Just know that it just is stretching this out. Does that mean that the person will then have the coronavirus? It'll get even more serious? No, we'll still get over it. It just takes a little bit more time. Heat is incredible. What I have in the protocol that I recommend is the ways that's simple. You don't have to have a sauna. It's just the simplest things. So I can start through that if you want me to.
Well, sure. And then you also have a course on this as well. But at the end of the day, and I'm sure like hot water, keeping your neck warm, these are things that are suggestive on your normal protocol. I would imagine those are super helpful in this as well.
Those are the tools. I have a couple other things that we have to discuss too. But, I have a whole course it's called Living Well. And if you did that course, you will build your immune system. But what if you have the coronavirus right now and you're listening to this podcast and you're sick right now with the cough and the fever and, you're miserable? What do you do now? Because you will not build your immune system overnight. You can do the Living Well course, and I would encourage everybody to do that course. But your immune system's not going to come online to fight this particular virus. We need to do something right now, this second, to help you. And that's what this coronavirus protocol, I've actually put it on the homepage of my website.
Excellent.
You'll see it there. Yeah, so it just says it's a coronavirus protocol. And I am specific to the coronavirus because I've added a couple things to it to help people to understand who don't take the Living Well course, because the Living Well course, I go into huge detail. That is a very thorough course to help you build your immune system, just make you as healthy as you possibly can be. But I don't have the time to, people don't have necessarily, I think it'd be great, maybe, for them to take the time, but if they're feeling sick right now, they're not going to feel well enough to even go through the course. But what we need to do is help them to feel better now. So these are the things that we would do to help you raise your body temperature. And believe me, you're not going to go over 106. It doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to get that high. That can only be medically induced. So first thing we do is we wear a scarf around our neck. We wear it all day long, inside the house, outside the house. We wear it all night long. And if you say, I don't have a scarf, then take a sock, take a
Totally.
dish towel, get a piece of cloth, whatever you got, and wrap it around your neck, because that's going to increase the temperature at the throat area. And when you increase the temperature, you are exponentially increasing the destruction of the virus. It's so effective. And if you do this right at the beginning, at the first sign of, I think I have a little cough, I think you just think, I have a little cough. Start this second. But what if you already have it? You're already deep into it. You're 2 days into the coughing and everything else. We're going to do the scarf, because we will shorten the life of the virus. We will shorten all the symptoms, and so we get rid of it much more quickly. Everybody should be drinking hot water. These are preventatives too. If you say, well, I'm afraid that I've been exposed to coronavirus, but the incubation period is 2 days to 14 days. So what if I have it? Do the scarf now. It's not going to hurt you. Drink your water hot now. And this is not room temperature water. This is not lukewarm water. This is hot water. Now, not so hot that you scald your tongue, but We're talking hot water, not room temperature. And the purpose is it will raise your body temperature. And we're not going to raise it. Not going to raise this by 10 degrees. Believe me, you're not going to jump up to 106 again. But if we can just increase it a little bit, it's an exponential change in being able to get rid of the virus. And so we should be getting, if you're a 100 to 150 pound person, you need at least 12 cups of water, because when we're sick, we lose more water when we're sick, because to go through any type of chemical reaction, we use a lot more water than you normally would. So a 100 to 150 pound person would need 12 cups of water. If you're more than 150 pounds, you need to increase. If you're smaller, like a child, you would drink less too. But we do not want to become dehydrated, especially when you have a fever and we are happy about the fever. You need more water. Most people are not toasty warm. They're wearing whatever clothes they are, and they don't have layers on. They say, well, I'm not cold. I'm not chilled, but they're not warm. When I say toasty warm, I mean it's that feeling that you get when you come in a cold day and you stand in front of the fire and you feel the warmth sink all the way into your bone marrow. It's just like, yeah, now I'm warm. That's the type of warm we need to be. Not just, well, hey, I can tolerate it, I'm not cold. No, I need you warm all the way down to your toes and all the way to the tips of your hair roots, So, and then you don't have to perspire. A lot of people think, oh, I have to sweat. No. We don't want to get carried away. You don't have to perspire. You can. I mean, with a fever, you might go through periods of sweat and then you're cold again. But we just need to be warmer than you normally are. And we need to stay out of drafts. So many people don't even think about this. They're by a window. They sleep by a window with their head right up against a window, and they don't even realize that cold air is coming down, because hot air goes up, cold air goes down. And so that cold air comes down on us, and it makes it worse. So we shouldn't sleep, stand, sit by windows, doors, doorways. Just stay out of drafts. And don't have the fans blowing. A lot of times we'll have ceiling fans going, or we'll have whatever fan going in the room. Moving air lowers body temperature, and so that would impede our healing. Something else too is that whenever you're outside, especially when you're sick, you want to cover your ears, because most places always there's a breeze. You're on the coast in California, there's a breeze always going out there. I don't know if you have still days, Lacy, or not. You have to tell me. Yeah. But I know
it's pretty breezy.
It's pretty breezy. And so that breeze against our open ear canal is also going to lower our body temperature and immune system function. So put a cap on. In Wisconsin, we're famous for caps with flaps, I don't know if you've got them out there. I won't say that they're the greatest in design, clothing, but they're warm. You got ear flaps on your cap, or a stocking cap that you pull over your ears, or, you see women with headscarves. And if you say, well, I don't want to do that. You don't understand. It doesn't fit with my style. Could you at least put cotton in your ears or earplugs? That will help us. So those are the things we do to stay warm. There's a way to really help you stay warm besides the sauna, and that's by putting a heating pad on our chest. And the chest is where you want to focus, is because that's where the coronavirus is making its entrance. It's on those epithelial cells that are lining our lungs. Epithelial cells are cells that are in contact with the hollow spaces in our body. And so your lungs are a hollow space. And so the cells that are coming in contact with that hollow space are called epithelial cells. And that's where the coronavirus is targeting. And if we can heat our chest area, where the coronavirus is being incubated and where it's launching its attack, replicating itself and launching its attack, we'll snuff it out. And the heating pad is one of the most powerful tools we have. You can also use a hot water bottle. There's these rice bags or bean bags. They're bags that are filled with rice or beans. Throw them in the microwave and heat them up. That's another way. There is a caution, though, that I have to say. If you have a child and the child is sick, Do not use a heating pad. Do not use the hot water bottles or the rice or the bean bags on any infant or toddler or small child or any elderly person or an infirm individual, because they can't tell you that they're overheating. You and I know, hey, I'm getting too hot. I'm like way too hot here, Okay, let's take the heating pad off, turn it off or whatever. They can't tell you that. And so don't ever do that for a child. Just put layers on them, hold them. I mean, just the body heat of being held against your parent, that's enough to warm you up, and use the layers of clothing. And of course, we have blankets, but don't ever put a heating pad on a little child or an elderly person who can't, that's in a bed and can't turn over or communicate to you, or any other infirm individual. So again, don't get into our heads. Sometimes we think, oh, we got to sweat this thing out. You don't have to sweat. You just need to raise your body temperature some, and that will be exponentially helpful. So
I love that. And as a mother of 5 and somebody who's so versed in biochemistry on a cellular level, what are your favorite immune boosters or preventatives, which I think will differ than what we're seeing in mainstream?
Above and beyond all immune system boosters, it is the heat. I use that for everything. Lacy, I've been using that for my entire life. I'm never sick, but I'm always wearing a scarf. You'll say, well, you weren't exposed to anything. Who knows when I am going to be exposed to something. I always have a scarf around my neck, or some big turtleneck, something covering my neck. And then after that, it's to eliminate the sugar. The sugar, I need to spend some time on this if you don't mind, because this is so important, the whole sugar issue. There are other things like in the Living Well protocol that we have to address, but those things are in the long-term building of the immune system. But sugar will suppress our immune system significantly 1 to 2 hours after we ingest sugars. We will have a huge decrease in the capacity of the neutrophil, especially the macrophage also, but the neutrophil and its ability to do its job. The neutrophil is that white blood cell, and it actually goes through this process of the phagocytosis, which is the eating of the virus, but it also does more things than that. It sets up what are called extracellular traps. A neutrophil extracellular trap, they're called NETs. NET is an acronym for neutrophil extracellular traps. They're like this mesh that's composed of neutrophil granular proteins and chromatin, and they are outside of the cell, and they entrap the virus outside the cell before it can enter the cell and commandeer the cell machinery to replicate itself, and then go through that process of exocytosis and throw its little children and descendants outside the cell to go create more damage. These neutrophils actually set up traps outside the cell to capture the coronavirus or any other virus. And they hold it there, and it provides a scaffold to hold these components. And then we developed in these antiviral agents, these microbes to go in and kill then the virus. It's a really cool thing. And when we eat sugar, we've actually measured the neutrophils and their ability to set up their extracellular traps, their ability to go through phagocytosis, their ability to do toll. There's something called toll-like receptors. They're spanning proteins that help the cells to talk to one another. They're signaling receptors. All of those things we're able to measure. And when we eat sugar, within 1 to 2 hours after consuming sugar, we have dramatically cut the ability of these white blood cells to work. And we test at 30 minutes, at 1 hour, at 2 hours, at 3 hours, at 4 hours, and at 5 hours. And all the tests that we've done stop at 5 hours. And at 5 hours, our immune system is still very suppressed and not able to do its full job. And it may be suppressed after 5 hours, but right now we don't have any scientific data that anybody's taken it past the 5 hour mark. But we know that if you're eating sugar, if you have a coronavirus and you're eating sugar, you got to stop. It's not just, we think of sugar as sweet. Okay, I understand. I'm not going to eat my donuts. I'm not going to have my brownie. I'm not going to eat my cookie or my cake, or, I'm not going to eat my pudding or Jello. We got that. But what we don't realize, this test that I was telling you that we've done, these scientific studies that are showing and proving to us that we disable the immune system, we included fruit sugar. This is fructose too. Fructose does the same thing. And so we are so convinced that, we have to eat fruit because we need the vitamin C, because the vitamin C is going to increase our immune system function. It does, but there's some little parts and pieces of that. The vitamin C, the structure of a sugar molecule is very similar to a vitamin C molecule, and it actually takes up the receptor sites that your vitamin C might take up, and it tricks the cell into thinking it's vitamin C and it's actually sugar. We can't do it. Fructose will lower your immune system function. So we don't eat fruit and say, but wait, where should I get my nutrients? You get them from our vegetables. We can get vitamin C from our vegetables, and we don't have the sugar with it. So it's your sucrose, your glucose, your fructose, those are the fruit sugars and all the sugars that we find in our desserts. It's honey, it's orange juices, it's molasses and syrup. All of these were tested, and they significantly decrease the capacity of the neutrophils to do their job. So we can't do any of those. By the way, it's very interesting. The data that was gathered in this particular study that I'm referencing right now, where they tested the fructose and the glucose and the sucrose, the honey and the orange juice, they also tested complex carbohydrates, like eating bread, rice, noodles, potatoes, cereal, crackers, chips, to see if that reduced the neutrophil activity. It did not at all. It was just these high sugar items.
Wow.
So you can still have your bread and your noodles and your rice and all that and say, oh, well, they all turn to sugar, so they're bad. Well, all carbohydrates turn to blood glucose. Broccoli will turn to blood glucose because that's what carbohydrates do. But because they're complex and they're very slowly released into the bloodstream, the scientific data is very clear. It does not reduce the neutrophil's ability to snuff out viruses.
A question I have for you on this note, Karen, I've been drinking, and I think a lot of people do this during this time. I've just been craving them. That's why I've been doing it. But all green, like cold pressed green juices, but at room temperature. Is that equally as problematic because it's pure sugar, essentially, even if it's like fresh pressed, but room temperature only greens?
Well, the problem is when you're just doing the juice from the greens, you're not doing the fiber from the greens, you're throwing the fiber away.
Yeah, I've just been craving, I think, the minerals and the enzymes of my body. So I've been like, okay, I'm going to do it. I don't typically do that often. And in fact, I haven't been able to for a long time because of the blood sugar adrenaline issue. Yeah. Now it seems to be fine.
Yeah, it can be a problem because you see, what makes a complex carbohydrate so complex is the fiber in it. So when we juice a vegetable, we throw away that fiber. And so it becomes a simple carbohydrate. And so then it can do the same thing.
Right.
We actually they've got different, I don't want to use the word juicer, but they have different machines that will just pulverize the vegetable for you. And it is a pulp. Basically we're making baby food. We're making it pure.
It's like smoothies.
Yeah, it's like a smoothie.
Exactly.
Yeah. But at least you have the fiber there, and then that is what's slowing the absorption of these sugars into the bloodstream. So if we just drink the juice, like I have so many people say, I'm going to drink carrot juice. It's like you're just drinking straight sugar. You don't do that. Eat the carrot. You know how carrots are full of fiber. You got to chew on those things to get them down because they're so full of fiber. That's what makes it complex, and that's what's protecting us.
So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest, to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest. Unblocked Inner Child, and Unblocked Shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else, such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the Pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily, in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones. You can use our special code, EXPANDED, all caps, EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first a la carte workshop purchase or $20 off your first month of the Pathway. Again, that's all caps, EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode. And on the immune supportive front, pre-catching a flu, this is like building your immunity. Do beans fall into this as well?
They do in the long term. Absolutely. Like I was talking about this Living Well course that I have, the e-course. The beans are definitely a part of building an immune system. But if you have the coronavirus right now, eating beans are not going to help you get over this virus by, next week. But doing all this heat stuff and cutting out your sugar, yes. Or let's take caffeine, for instance. I did not put caffeine on this protocol for the coronavirus. Caffeine is just a really bad knock against the immune system. But the problem is if a person is already addicted to caffeine and they get the coronavirus and they decide they're going to go off of caffeine at the same time they're going off of sugar, which they have to go off of sugar to get over this virus more rapidly, it's just way too much, too fast. Because caffeine withdrawal is steep. I mean, you think you got a headache from the fever from the virus. Oh, you're going to have a whopping headache. I mean, you'll just be ready just to, you don't die, but you make yourself more miserable. It's like, we need to get past this. If you're sick with the coronavirus, we do the coronavirus protocol. And then as soon as we're past it, then we jump onto the Living Well. And then we bring in the beans. We get rid of the rest of all the stuff I talk about in huge detail, all other things that we have to do.
For the person who, say, is struggling with autoimmune and is compromised, is exactly the suggestions you're giving with the heat, is that equally as effective for them as well?
It is.
Before they go to Code Red.
Absolutely. They need to be doing this first and foremost because they might not have to go to Code Red. They can. It will blow people's mind. I challenge people to do this heat thing. Just get warmer. Get that scarf around your neck. Get some layers on you. Stay warm. It's going to blow your mind how fast and rapidly you heal as soon as you can get warm. It's exponential healing compared to, just being a regular, I'm not cold. No, I need you to be beyond not cold. I need you to be warm. Toasty warm down to your bone marrow. The other thing is that, and I put it in here because it is important, but not everybody can do this, and that is garlic. Garlic is a very, very precious food to us. Garlic is a sulfur type compound. That's where its power lies in those valence electrons on that sulfur atom. And it is a natural antiviral. Its unique properties actually target cells that are harmful. On some things we target all cells, good cells, bad cells, we just kill them all out. Not with garlic. And by the way, the heat doesn't do that either. It's just it's just helping your immune system function. It's only going to target the bad cells, the virus cells. But garlic can actually target what is a bad cell, a viral cell, and it triggers apoptosis. Apoptosis is the cell death of that virus. It just causes it to die. And so garlic is important in that it is an antiviral. It's also an antibacterial, antifungal. But there is one problem with it, and that is it's really hard on the gut. I mean, it's really hard on the gut. I don't know if people have found that when they eat garlic, they feel maybe sick at their stomach, or they have acid reflux, or they have heartburn. And so some people can eat garlic and, and not have any problem with it at all. But some people have a real difficult time. So if you're one of those people then don't worry about the garlic. Just doing the heat alone and getting rid of your sugar, that alone will snuff out this coronavirus. But if you say, well, I just want to take an extra measure and you tolerate garlic well, just cook with garlic, sprinkle it on your food. And garlic does not need to be raw. A lot of
Oh.
times we think garlic has to be a raw because that's the best way and it's the most effective way. Actually, not so. I used to think the same thing until I worked really. I worked in my master's degree program. I spent a lot of time in researching garlic, especially in relationship to cancer. And it is very interesting that it's to break down products and it has to go through several chemical changes. And it's way down the line of garlic after it's been cooked, after it's been broken down into different components. That's when it's most effective. So our cooked garlic, or we can buy garlic in a jar, you can buy minced garlic in a jar. That actually is more effective than the raw garlic.
Wow.
And the cooked garlic is not as hard on your stomach.
Yeah, I've been roasting it with vegetables and it's fantastic.
It is fantastic and it's much more mild after you roast it. If you eat it raw, oh yeah, it can give you a little bit of a stomach ache. So it's not the key piece in fighting a coronavirus. It's just an additional thing that we can do. The key piece is heat and get rid of the sugar, including the fruit sugars. Those are your key pieces. And you'll be astounded, just astounded at what will happen.
And to wrap this thought up, because this episode's applicable not just to this coronavirus scare, but to the flu season, to the cold season every year, how I just want your last words for the person who's in full fear based on the media, what's, being presented. Obviously, people are getting hit now because of the aftermath economically. We're seeing
Yes.
isolation. But for the person who is still sitting there and afraid right now, you've given excellent tools. Can you just give one last thought to just calm everybody's mind and nervous system here?
Yeah. The regular old person out there, yeah, you might be sick and have a cough and have a fever and wrap your arms around the fever and embrace it as a friend, but you're going to get over it. And sometimes people have a worse case of it or not. We've already talked about those that are immunocompromised, but it's just the virus of the season.
Okay, so I want to segue into a couple of quick topics. We covered so much in the first episode, which we have linked below. It's jam-packed. It's the protocol I've been following now for 7 months. I've seen drastic results. You've heard Unique Hammond's episode, which is basically just one big testimonial for this. So a couple of things I've been seeing pop up a lot in community. We covered Lyme, how you feel it's bacterial. We may give a little overview, but what about the mold toxicity and sensitivity we see in a lot of people, especially when it's tied to Lyme?
Yeah, now the mold is something completely different than Lyme's. Lyme's is a bacteria, and that's an infection. Mold is a fungal infection, not bacterial. So they respond in different ways. And this mold can release something called mycotoxins. It's not micro, it's mycotoxins. And these toxins then can interfere with cellular activity. They, when I was talking about garlic a few minutes ago as a natural antiviral, that is the key piece. It kills mold dead. Your immune system will also attack it, but mold is a very resilient fungal infection, and it just takes one spore to get it going again, and you're easily reinfected. If you're exposed to it again, or, depends on, the type of fungal infection that we're talking about, like athlete's foot is a fungal infection. You can get it again and again. And so the best thing to do to fight that is to have a healthy immune system, which that whole Living Well course addresses, because it takes a while to build an immune system. You do not build it overnight. And just be eating well the whole time. But then garlic is the key piece because it kills mold dead. It just can't survive in the presence of that very sulfuric acid type of garlic. Has that wonderful property of being a sulfur.
And so I have two friends in my community, and of course we talked about in the first episode that we believe that Lyme is being very much overtly diagnosed, and maybe improperly
Yeah.
diagnosed. But
Yeah.
two of the people that come to mind, they have they're very sensitive to mold. They can walk into a building and start to have flare-ups
Right.
because they're like, oh, there's mold in here. And they
Yeah.
can't live in certain houses. What is that that's going on?
It's because they're overrun already.
Uh,
Um, it's because they have so much mold in their system that a little bit just puts them over the edge. They're standing on the edge of the cliff, and then just one little puff of wind and they blow over. So what we have to do is we have to step away from the edge of the cliff. So we have to kill the existing mold that's already inside the body, and that will come through a strong immune system and through consumption of garlic. Cooked garlic is best.
and so the two courses to check out in that case are.
It's the living well. And then mold, is that cover that under allergies? I do because, see, mold
Okay.
is so associated with allergies. And so I spent a whole big long time in my allergies course talking about mold. It's not an allergy. Mold is not an allergy, but it's lumped together. Like if you go in and you have an allergy test done, where you see if you're sensitive to this or you have an allergy to that. Mold is typically something that is tested for an allergy test, but allergies are a whole different thing than mold. Mold is a fungal infection. It's not a dead piece of protein. Allergens are dead pieces of protein. But molds are live. They're little live microbes out there reproducing themselves.
Yeah. And so, because what I'm seeing, the typical treatment protocol for those that I know with Lyme and this mold sensitivity, these people I can think of have both. It's like all of the IV treatments, and I mean, it's like the bee treatment. It's just such an extensive um, and financially burdening experience to try to fix this. And I mean, your
It's so
approach is always accessible.
It is so accessible, and you're not going to spend any money on it. I mean, you just have to buy food, and you're going to buy good food instead of bad food. I mean, you have to buy food, so you might as well buy good food. And I'm not talking about food that's hard to obtain. You have to go to special grocery stores. You can just go to a regular grocery store and buy your good food, and then just add some garlic, to your whatever you're cooking. You know,
And another topic I will admit I actually have very little knowledge in, but I do want to make sure, we're going to have you on soon to really cover like pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, morning sickness, post, all of that. So I'm excited to do one episode in that. But here I want to start to extract so that we can cover everybody and eventually hit every topic. MS and Parkinson's. What are
yeah.
your thoughts there in your approach?
These are neurological diseases. I'm actually going to be publishing a course on that because there's lots besides MS and Parkinson's. We have the ALS, the amyotrophic sclerosis. It's called Lou Gehrig's disease. There are several things that affect that create neurological problems. In the case of Parkinson's disease, it's a problem with dopamine. Dopamine is one of the neurotransmitters that are sending messages to different parts of our body to say work, and then our muscles do not respond properly because we don't have the correct amount of dopamine. And so these are these neurological diseases. Like now multiple sclerosis that's a little bit different. um, Multiple sclerosis is not a dopamine issue. Multiple sclerosis is plaque builds up on the myelin sheath. The myelin sheath is all of our nerves are covered with like an insulating material. Sort of, our nerves are like wires. They're carrying electrical messages all the time. And we have to insulate those wires so the electrical message can reach its destination. Otherwise, it can shoot off and go into a different direction and never reach its destination. So we have to insulate the wires. It's just like in your house, all of your wires in your house are covered with an insulating material. In our bodies, we're covered with a sheath that insulates all the neural fibers. In multiple sclerosis, there are holes that are blown in the sheath. They get a hole, and then your immune system comes in and has to repair the damage. If the right materials are available, we will repair that sheath and it will be just as new. If you don't have the right materials available, you will get a plaque or a scar tissue. And that scar tissue is thicker than the original sheath. And so it will compress and push against the nerve inside because it's thicker. Just think about some big lump on a very thin little nerve. And so that's compressing the nerve. And when you compress the nerve, then you get these feelings of numbness, tingling, or you have a drop foot. You're telling your foot to lift and move and it doesn't. And those are signs and symptoms of multiple sclerosis. So I have worked with a lot of people with multiple sclerosis. Primary progressive multiple sclerosis, we can slow that baby down and just stop its progression, and just wherever you are, we can just stop progressing. Relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis, that's a much better prognosis because we can get it to go away and not come back if we can, if you follow the protocol. It's pretty strict though. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you and say, oh, it's okay, that you can occasionally have something sweet to eat, or no, no, because all those things just tear up that myelin sheath. In the course, I don't have it published yet. I'll be recording that in a couple of weeks. I'm getting into all the details about how that works. It's pretty fantastic the way the central nervous system is working, but there are no guarantees. It depends on how far a person has progressed in their neurological disorder, because what happens, we're talking about neurons. And out of all the cells in the human body, neurons are the only ones that don't go through a mitosis. A mitosis is a cellular cycle where one cell, it basically dies off. That's the simplest way to put it. And it's replaced by another one. It's where we have that replication that I was talking about with the viruses, how things are replicated. There's a template. Well, we have a DNA template. And we will, when a cell gets close to its being its full span of life, we will replicate that cell's DNA and make a new cell. That's called a mitosis. Every cell in the human body goes through a mitosis. Some cells go through it every few hours, some cells 7 to 10 days, some cells every 3 days, some cells every 120 days. Bone cells are once every 2 years. They'll go through a mitosis. But neurons, those are our central nervous system cells. They don't ever go through a mitosis.
Wow.
If you killed it, it's gone. It doesn't recover. So that's why it's really important, we don't want to destroy neurons.
It's similar to Alzheimer's when we were chatting about that, right?
Oh yeah, Alzheimer's nasty piece because you actually destroy the neuron. And so the nice thing is that we have several neuronal connections. Like one neuron can talk to, it go through millions of different pathways to send its electrical signal to go through another neuron to carry it to another way and another way. It's sort of like if you want to travel from New York to Los Angeles, how many different ways can you take to get there? Innumerable ways. You can go up through Canada, you can go down through Mexico, you can go through Oklahoma, maybe you want to go through Iowa, maybe you want to go through the Dakotas, maybe you're going to go down through Arizona. There's all kinds of ways. And then with any little town, you can go through, I'm going to make this turn instead of that turn. So there's multiple ways that you can finally get to your destination. It's the same way in the brain. But the more and more neurons that are destroyed, then we are limiting, we come up to roadblocks. It's like that road's closed because when you destroy a neuron, it will not transmit the electrical signal to the next brain cell. It stops dead. So that's why people with Alzheimer's, if you have a relative with Alzheimer's, you'll notice that sometimes they can remember and sometimes they just can't. And they're trying to remember the same information. And it's because they're when they can't remember, their electrical signal is running against a neuron that has perished and is dead. And then another time the signal will run a different route. It'll go on a different path, and then the signal gets through, and then you can say, oh yeah, I remember, it was this. But the more and more cells that are destroyed, then the less and less pathways we have.
Amazing. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense when you explain that to me. My grandmother, passed away from that, and so it was something I was really concerned with. And you said the real root issue there on that one is sugar at the end of the day.
It's not a genetic thing. It's not a genetic thing. that has to do with glucoreceptors on the neurons. And we're back to sugar again. But we have receptors on our actual neurons. And the more you trigger them, the more you destroy that cell. So sugar's just a bad thing all the way around. Lowers the immune system function,
And
causes all kinds of problems. I can get into that, Lacy. I mean, it causes inflammation through the production of these cytokines.
I agree. I mean, that's just kind of like clear and simple. One thing I was curious about when I first started the Bean Protocol, what about heavy metals? Is that also because it feels so blood cleansing, the protocol? It has felt so blood cleansing along the way?
Yeah, heavy metals are very easily cleared by the body. The liver is responsible for clearing these heavy metals, whether it's aluminum, lead, cadmium, whatever it is. The metals are cleared by the liver, even from the soft tissue, because they like to reside in soft tissue, because they're attracted to sulfur atoms. Sulfur atoms and heavy metals always bind, always. There's this chemical affinity for each other. And so if we are eating garlic, if I have somebody that has heavy metal poisoning, I say, okay, we're going to just add garlic to your food. If you got it, if it hurts your stomach, we're just going to have to cook it so it doesn't hurt your stomach. And then the heavy metals bind to this sulfur atom, and then that's found in the garlic. And then your liver will clean out the mercury sulfide or the lead sulfide, whatever it is, whatever heavy metal it is. And then the liver dumps it into your biofluids. And then if you're eating beans, that's a story in itself, Lacy, how beans and how they work. But if you're eating soluble fiber, then you're able to throw it away. Can we throw it away? So it's super. I know a lot of people do the chelation process, but you don't even have to do that. You just do this with food.
Yeah. And for the listener who's totally unaware of the Bean Protocol or what we're talking about, it is the foundation of the first episode, which I do talk about in the intro, everything we cover. So I highly recommend going back and listening to that. It's also the foundation of Karen's work and her story. So one other thing that I promised my team and listeners that I would ask, because there are so many in our community who are like, they are so firm in their beliefs of being vegan or vegetarian. Are there ways to harmonize this protocol if one isn't willing to eat animal protein?
That's a very good question. By the time I finish publishing all my e-courses, Lacy, there will be 20 of them out there. Out of those 20, 5 are absolutely critical that you have to have efficient and complete protein, so there's not a way to harmonize. The other 15, we can get away with it. We can still correct your acne. We can still get rid of your PMS. We can still, become, more fertile or whatever. I think it's just lack of knowledge, to understand what a complete and efficient protein is. And I go into that in huge depth and detail in all the courses of why it's so important. But, most people that are vegetarian, oftentimes they will, I'll point out to them, an egg, if it's not fertilized, is not an animal.
It's the same as us. We release an egg every month.
We release an egg every month. It's a very good source of protein. So, there's unfertilized eggs. Actually, most eggs are unfertilized, that you buy in the store. And
so if you are for animal rights and you are seeking out a farm that, it's totally open, pasture raised, and it's really, really conducive, like a local farm with the chickens' rights, essentially that could be a great form of protein.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you go to my website, if you go to the course, I have a listing of courses on my website, and I have started to put on those courses, if I'm actually warning, that sounds horrible, warning. I just want to be upfront and tell people, if you are vegan, then you just need to know that this course is going to require that you eat the proteins, that is that important. So,
and that's great, because that gives somebody, reasoning and their own journey. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And I am so for animal rights and all the rest of it. I'm not against that, but there's the alternative, like the egg. And some people say we don't want to eat the egg, 3 times a day. because I'll get an allergy to it. No, you won't. No, you won't. You're gonna
Not
eat
with the
beans.
beans. Yeah. The
No
beans
way.
they've taken away, because I used to have an egg allergy. This is actually an interesting story. I had an egg allergy that developed because I was eating them daily. And obviously my liver wasn't being cleared out. So I did the beans for two mitoses, my mitoses meaning hormonal. So that means 6 months. And at Christmas, my dad had made a frittata and it was all there was to eat. My blood sugar was low. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll try it. Because what would happen before is my eyes would get red. I'd be instantly fatigued for the day. So I tried it and it was fine. And the beans literally cleared out my liver and cleared up the allergy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean,
good for
so
people to know.
we can't say, well, if I ate the same protein over and over, like if I ate the eggs, then that's a problem. Well, no, it won't be a problem at all.
Well, you also have to think back to just our ancestors, right? Some of them, depending on where they lived, only had access to one thing. May it be seafood. Maybe if you were a herder, you only had access to one type of animal. So, just going back to 200 years ago and beyond, that's kind of how we had to eat. If we only had access to wild game, maybe it was deer. If we were in, like a desert climate. So it's just really wrapping our heads back around to our ancestors.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another one that I found really interesting, a lot of people that are, feeling age spots, right? Like I'm susceptible to them. My skin type is. I loved when I asked you in our last session about, I'm getting these age spots. What part of this protocol, if any part, will start to reverse that?
Yeah. Age spots are a process of aging. And so if we can slow that process down, and we do that by the essential fatty acids. And so the essential fatty acids are good oils like nuts, seeds, sunflower seeds and pistachios and pecans and walnuts. It's not coconut oil. Coconut oil, a lot of people are into coconut oil. It's actually a very saturated fat, and it increases the aging process and cause oxidation. And so then you damage those melanocytes. The melanocyte is the cell that has the pigmentation for your skin, and if that gets damaged, then you have this problem with it. And so hormones, by the way, can create this problem too. In pregnancy, you can see that sometimes people will have, or darkening of their skin, and that's a hormonal thing too. But then that's where your beans come in and help that one. It depends on what the situation is. But if it's the aging process, liver spots, oh yeah, they clear up. They clear up.
Awesome. Well, I feel like I extracted so much of your knowledge and time today, and I can't wait to schedule our next chat, especially everything to do with the birth realm, because I love your very unique and interesting approach to it. I've heard a lot of your, episodes about like lactation support and morning sickness. And I know you have courses on these now. So I'm really excited to cover that in depth soon. But for today, we just want to say thank you so much for calming our fears, Karen, for always giving us very accessible, reliable remedies and healing. And I can't wait to talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Lacy. Thank you for having me on.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, we did. And in case you're not totally ready to join the pathway yet, I wanted to share a few of our free offerings that I'll often suggest to people as a little bit of a blueprint to get them started on their manifestation journey. The first place I like to direct people completely for free is the motivation. You can see it linked below or on our homepage as our testimony library. And it's categorized by different subjects, whether you're calling in career, money, love, wellness, and much more. When you're reading about a member's experience of what they manifested, you're actually seeing to believe and showing your subconscious that that very thing is possible for you. The second place I like to direct people is to the free clarity exercise, which is also linked below. In it, you get to try our own unique hypnosis process, learn about the science, and some journaling prompts. And the best part about this, you'll get a tiny taste of what it's like to go into your hypnotic state, bring your subconscious forward, and create new neural pathways while receiving clarity. And the third thing, if you haven't listened to it on this podcast yet, please go back to the episode titled Manifestation 101, where you'll learn the basics of neural manifestation to truly understand this process. So go ahead and check out those free resources, the motivation, the free clarity exercise, and the episode Manifestation 101, all linked below. And in an effort to make sure to have representation in this process series, go ahead and submit any process testimonials you have, especially to our LGBTQ plus community, our BIPOC, as well as the Ys, which is anyone in the community who is 45 and over. All right, we'll be back next week.